Welcome to the Love, Purpose, Connection podcast. I am your host, Estelle Bingham, and together we'll be delving into the profound meaning of love, the driving force of purpose, and the beauty of connection that shapes the fabric of our lives. In each episode, I sit down with some of the most inspiring individuals out there to understand the ways love has touched them. Clarisse Monahan is an astrologer, tarot reader, and author of Astrocartography. She finds the patterns that shape our lives through the stars, the cards, and the stories that they tell. I'm super excited to dive into her unique perspective on love, purpose, and the cosmic design behind all of it. A warm welcome, Clarisse, to the Love, Purpose, Connection podcast.
Thank you so much, Estelle. I'm so happy to be here.
It's so wonderful. I know that you're in the airport in Copenhagen currently.
I am.
Which I love. I'm loving the fact that you're, just on the road and, talking all things astrocartography. And I'm super excited to hear about my star map as well, because you've done that, haven't you?
I have, yes, absolutely.
Which is amazing. But maybe let's just get people into the idea of or the understanding of what astrocartography is, because it's been around since, you write about it in your book, since the 70s, but also it's pretty ancient, the Romans and the Greeks, and it's a thing that many astrologers, ancient astrologers, would decide what to do or where to go depending on the planetary movements of what was happening astrologically. Give us a little bit of an overview of what that history looks like.
Absolutely. And even when we think about casting a birth chart, we can't cast a birth chart without a location. So we're always using time and place, right? So astrocartography, absolutely, like Ptolemy associated different parts of the world with different star signs. In the Vedic tradition, it's very much about how you construct your actual house. So from an architectural perspective, so everything is so imbued with where placement is. So it's been around for many, many years. And also before Jim Lewis brought it to popularity, and people were charting the eclipses and where the eclipses would appear across the world. So in a sense, that was the first emergence of astrocartography as we use it today. And then, of course, when Jim Lewis came around, technology advancements just made it so much more easier to calculate charts and to show where your lines and your places were.
Wow. You talk about archetypes. Why are archetypes important and part of this sort of star map, the astrocartography and our star maps?
Because we're working with planetary lines, and planets are just archetypes. So when we think about our Venus line, we're embodying or evoking that Venusian energy, Aphrodite herself. So love, beauty, harmony, connection, peace, anything that's easy. That's what we're evoking. But say we want to go to a Mars line, that's going to be the opposite, right? Mars is the planet of war, of ambition, of drive, of friction. We're going to be doing lots of things on a Mars line. We want to be going after what we want. And if you think about going to those two places for a vacation, on a Venus line, you want to be maximizing your itinerary for pleasure, lovemaking, art galleries, shopping, treatments. On a Mars line, you're going to want to be doing risky things, or like going off-road, adventuring, biking, doing a yoga class. You're not going to want to sit still. So you do also have to think about that if you're in a couple and each of you are going to maybe Mars and Venus, like how do you balance that out? But if you know that in advance, it can just be like, okay, we're going to satisfy your Mars energy by doing this. We're going to be more active during the day. And then nighttime, we're going to do Venusian things. So it can be really nice for planning the itinerary as well, and hopefully having a more easy holiday with less arguments.
How do we actually work it out from our star signs, or our time of birth? Like, how do you get there?
Astrocartography simply means astro is the study of stars and cartography is the study of maps. So it's essentially just geography and astrology. So showing you where your most auspicious and least auspicious places are. And it's a really unique place to be in astrocartography because it's both people who are interested in astrology and people who are interested in travel. So I do a lot of work with travel companies, or I'm at travel exhibitions. And I find that even people who are very skeptical of astrology, as soon as they hear this idea of, wait, there's a reason why I felt that way in that holiday, because maybe on paper it was meant to be this great trip, like going to the French Riviera, and then it didn't pan out that way. And astrocartography can really just help you find out why that is. And especially for my friends in America who get 2 weeks vacation per year, why would you not want to know and maximize the best holiday possible? So I feel like in general terms, like astrocartography is super fascinating for people. So how it's worked out is that at the time of your birth, everyone gets a unique birth chart, which you obviously know yourself. So everyone gets obviously, your sun sign, people know, but then you have a moon sign, a Venus sign, etc. So astrocartography just takes that one step further and it plots that out on a map of the world. And it shows you where each planet was rising, setting, culminating, and anti-culminating. Because as you know in astrology, those four cardinal points have got more power to them. So we all know when the sun rises. So if you were born at around 6 a.m., give or take, right, you're going to be born on a sun rising line. If you were born around sunset, now that does change depending on winter or summer, but if you're born, say, between 5 and 7 p.m., you'd be born close to a sun DC line, so a sun relationship line. Now, the sun is pretty easy to track, right? It's 6 a.m., high noon, midday, sunset, and then about midnight, we have the anti-culminating position. But all the planets have their rise, culminating, set, and anti-culminating point. And that's what we're looking for. When you see your Venus line, that's where Venus was most powerful at your moment of birth. So when you connect with places that are on your Venus line, or when you connect with people from your Venus line, you're bringing that Venus energy to you in a more powerful way.
So it is about these lines, isn't it? You've got a personal line, there's a home line, and actually you can start to think about life in relation to these lines, be guided, really. I always listen to my inner guidance, but I've been interested in astrology and it's shaped my life for most of my life. Actually, my father was the big astrologer in our house. So, and my mother too, actually, she's always been understood astrology. So it's about this kind of, I feel like there's a sweet spot between the guidance. I always feel like our star sign and with all those all our planets they give us a way to work through our karma, and they map the life, but we also evolve beyond the life. So there's this thing around what is conducive, and there's a sweet spot between listening to your inner voice, but also balancing that with more of the oracle, I suppose, the oracle of the stars, the oracle of the cards. I've been doing cards obviously all my life too, but it's this wonderful sweet spot, I feel, that we can use these as tools, to really follow our purpose or work out, what's coming in, or what to do next, but with this inner guidance too. And I want to hear about that because I want to hear about my chart, and I thought it was a good way for people to get an idea of astrocartography and what you do, and also the book, which breaks it down, right? Because you can figure it out through the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to write it so that, it's not just opaque for people. You can go on astro.com and I have instructions in the book on how you can do this all for free online. I've also just launched an app where you can also just do it. It's on iPhone only at this stage, but it's also an app where you can put in your partner so you can find out your best locations to go together with you and a friend or a loved one, etc. Because also I feel like astro.com was a little bit tweaky. So I wanted to make an app to make it more accessible to people. But yes, absolutely, you can do this by yourself. And like you referenced, each planet has got four different lines. And by the way, I love how you talked about using the birth chart in this way for both guidance as an oracle, but also to improve our life. And I always think that's what the planets are. They help us be the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. And astrocartography is just another tool in getting to know those archetypes in a deeper, meaningful way. So it's a little bit like hacking the birth chart, because as you know, sometimes people are born with very prominent birth charts, as in they've got planets in the first house, the fourth house, the seventh, or the 10th, and they're going to show up so strongly. But when you use astrocartography, you get to go to a place where those planets are operating at that really potent level. Now, powerful in astrology doesn't always mean good, as you know. It just means it's going to show up, right? It's up to us to decide what we're going to do with that energy. That's why people always say oh, what line should I not go to? And I always say there's no bad line. You have to figure out what it is you want at this moment. And that can change depending on what life stage we're at, what kind of experiences we want to have, if we're early in our career, if we're late in our career. It really depends. And then that changes all the time. And then the other beautiful thing about astrocartography is that our maps never change, but what does change is the sky. So the sky is always changing. So there's a reason why you might have had a Jupiter line going through Berlin, for example, your whole life, but you moved when there was a certain transit activating it. And that's why it was that time, that place.
I love that. That's super up my street. That's really speaking to me, Clarisse. Like, I love that. Often people come to see me because they are looking to, figure out their purpose. Can you actually also work out quite specifics? So is it LA or New York? Is it London or Scotland? Can you work out those specifics within the actual regions?
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't also have to be exactly on the line. I like to use about a 300-mile radius. Jim Lewis used up to 750 miles, which I think is kind of wild because that's just so much territory, right? But I think anything within 300-mile radius is going to give you that energy. And sometimes, say, if you're going to a Mars line, Mars is associated with the archetype of power, war, resilience, entrepreneurship. So if you're kickstarting a business or you want to get in shape, right? Physical shape, that can be incredible. But, if you don't wanna be exactly on that Mars line, being about 100 miles away can also be okay, right? Like, sometimes we don't wanna turn the planets right up to a 20, we wanna maybe turn them up to a 12. So experiment with it a little bit. But yeah, absolutely, like, you can it's kind of like a flight chart. If you've ever, like, followed the flight map when you're on a plane, like, that's how the astrocartography lines look, and you can literally follow your line. It's gonna crisscross around the globe, and you can see, okay, like, it goes through these certain locations. This is the experience I'm gonna have there. But then we have to be practical. So I always have an in-depth client form that I send people before we do a session where I'm like, okay, where's off the table? Where can you not have a visa for? Like, do you need to be around schools and cities? Are you totally going for, into the countryside, bucolic environment? So that we're maximizing our time together. We're focusing on regions that are going to be accessible to them. So always thinking about what the client wants and then how we can match that best location to them. And then also thinking about the timing piece because Venus line is fantastic, but if someone's having Saturn transiting their Venus for the next year, they're not going to have a good experience there. It's not going to be the Venusian experience that they're expecting, let's just say. So it might behoove them to wait a bit or to think about some other areas or wait for the right timing. But usually I find like people want to move when the transits are activating. Like that's when everything's conspiring. It's like this moment right now.
100%. And I always also think, we need to, again, if we can marry that with our inner guidance, because what happens is, it'll be Mercury retrograde, and it's this idea of everything stops around Mercury retrograde. We can't move, we can't sign contracts, we can't do anything in Mercury retrograde. And actually, I do believe that you create, we're co-creating all the time, but things can be more auspicious too. Hi, it's Estelle here, and I'm so excited to share my new book with you, Manifest Your True Essence, Clear Your Blocks, Find Your Joy, Live Your Truth. This is more than just a book. It's an invitation to come home to your heart. Within its pages, you'll find the guidance to reconnect with your true essence. Through gentle meditations, heart-centered practices, and soulful wisdom, you'll learn how to release old patterns, embrace your divine spark, and manifest a life filled with love, purpose, and connection. Remember, you are love, you are light, and you are infinitely powerful. So let's look at my chart. Let's dive in, Clarisse. Tell me a little bit about what you found on my lines, and I'm going to, tune into that, and we'll see what comes from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I don't have you ever looked at your lines before, Estelle?
I've never, so this is the first time. This is what I mean. So I've been meaning to do my astrocartography for many, many years. So I'm loving the fact that this is completely new and fresh.
Okay. So Estelle, you have your Saturn line going right through LA. Now, Saturn is a line that's associated with responsibility. And usually we have significant Saturn transits when we between 28 and 30, but also every 7 years we have a Saturn square or opposition. So for you, you could have been drawn to that Saturn line during one of those times. And was LA significant for you when you went there? Were you having a Saturn transit?
I had my son in LA during my Saturn return. So that's really spot on.
I mean, having a child is a very Saturn return thing. It's all about responsibility, maturity, coming of age. And this Saturn line is also a Saturn home line. So the way we have those 4 different energies. So for you, this was Saturn home. So very connected to your family. I know a lot of people can say LA is flaky, but I think for you, you don't find that because you've got Saturn and also Venus here. This is Venus.
Oh, wow. Venus is so close. So
Yes.
in the sea, but
Mm-hmm.
close. Can I just
Yes.
see where it goes up and also where it goes down?
So Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, and then all the way, and then it goes down. So it's going right down through the ocean. And then you can see there's also a lot happening in New York as well on the East Coast.
Because New York is the other place.
Well, you've got Jupiter going through New York. So that's pretty incredible. So yes, everyone loves New York as a city, but not everyone's got Jupiter there. This is a Jupiter relationship line as well. So it's where you expand through the one-on-one, or it's where you see Jupiter through other people. Now, of course, that can be intimate partners, but it can also be business partners, clients, collaborators, where you feel like people are lifting you up in a very expansive way. So I don't know if you feel like clients from here are really, abundant or Jupiterian in their nature, because this is a really great line for relationships.
Wow. And what about Barbados in the Caribbean, in the West Indies, Caribbean?
Yeah, you got the moon line going well right through Cuba here, and then it kind of flanks Kingston. And moon is the second home. You got moon in Sag anyway, so you're always going to be a wanderer in some level, right? Because Sagittarius is the archer, always off in search of new experiences. But the moon, we get 4 moon lines, and usually they're where we feel, oh, I could live here. And then if you look at the UK, you can just see how strong this Venus line is here. Like that's what, yeah, it's literally right through London, which is just so powerful for you. And again, like even your logo, everything that you use is just so Venus in
It's so
Gemini.
Venus.
Yeah. And then look at Madagascar. It's so potent for you.
It's going off in Madagascar, let's
It
face
is going off. This is where all
It's totally going off. Whatever happens when I land in that place, it's going to be amazing. I'm really excited. And also, yeah, like that's Australia, which makes so much sense.
Yeah. And you've got Jupiter going right through the West Coast as well. So you really got everything in Australia. You've also got the sun. And you're a sun Chiron person. So when you go to your sun line, you also go to Chiron. And actually your sun Chiron line goes right through Uluru. So where Ayers Rock is. I don't know if you've been there, but that should be an extra magical. It's a very magical place anyway. But when you have lines going through magical places like Uluru, it's double down. Like say you got a line going through Petra, that makes it extra significant for you.
Wow.
But like for you as well, you're in Aries where the sun is exalted. So if you think about the dignity of your planets, like your sun is one of the most powerful planets, but you were born with a Virgo rising. So your sun is in the 8th house by whole sign, which technically is not such a visible part of the chart. Now, there's so much else going on in your chart that points to visibility, like Venus, Mars, Saturn in the 10th house on a Venus line. So prominence is not going to be an issue for you. But there's something about your sun which you do need to look at because it's right beside Chiron, it's in the 8th house. It's in Aries, which is the best, the most powerful exalted sun you can have, right? So when you go to your sun line, you're directly activating that warrior spirit, but also a Chiron. But for you, because it's one of your strongest planets and because it's in a little bit more of a hidden part of your chart where you were born, it's so nice for you to go to sun lines because you're really identifying with that solar spirit. And because you're so Venusian, the world sees, your Venus in Gemini, your Mars in Gemini, your Saturn in Gemini. When you go to your sun line, you become a little bit more autonomous, I would say, and independent, and more like, okay, who is Estelle?
Does it go up to Antarctica?
Yeah. You've got Sun, Chiron, Mercury, and Pluto all going up there.
So I love that. So it's really important for the listeners to understand that because we've got these amazing different lines happening and it is just so illuminating. Thank you so much for this wisdom today, Clarisse. I've really loved it. Just that last sort of understanding around the Chiron lines.
Yeah.
There's this culmination of there's this culmination that meets in Antarctica. And for me, I've got to think about the whales. How many Chiron lines do you have? Do you have 3 of each? So are there 3 Chiron lines?
So you're going to have 4. So if you think about it, just like the cardinal points. So the 1st house, the 10th house, the 7th, and the 4th. That's like the rising line, the setting line, the culminating line, and the anti-culminating line. And in the book, you can kind of see that I've divided it by section. So I've just called it like personal, relationship, home, career. So everyone's got those 4 lines and then you can be really specific. But again, be practical. Like if you want, like Chiron can be also incredible for retreats. Same with Neptune, right? Because Neptune, when you're going there, you're looking to instill something greater than yourself. So Chiron and Neptune, these tend to be lines which are, not as personal. They're more about with other people or activating healing in yourself so that you can go beyond. with deeper relationships in general. So Neptune can be incredible, Chiron can be incredible. So yeah, everyone's going to have 4 Chiron lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be so interesting when you see where people have a penchant for. Usually, every time they've got lines there already. So people already have an intuitive knowing. And we've all felt that. Like, when we go to a new place and we just feel like, I could live here. This feels really good. And then we've also been to those places which just irk us. Like in some way, we're like, I don't like it here. Even if on paper it's meant to be good.
That's so interesting and so true. And often people will feel like they can't meet their partner in a certain place. They just have a feeling or a sense that my love relationship isn't here. They're drawn, and it's a great way to just feel into that, right? With a bit of astrocartography is to see, because maybe it's about hanging on for a little bit, or it's not about running away from where you are, but it also may be that you were thinking about moving to Dublin or moving to Berlin, and actually there's a lot of different activity there for you that's written in your star map.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are single and you want to get in a relationship, just even having a think about Venus more is going to help you, right? Because the more we make friends with our Venus, the more we're concentrating on Venus, the more that's going to show up in our lives. So using astrocartography just for research can be helpful. It's like, okay, I've got 4 Venus lines. Where do they go through? Have I ever dated anyone from these lines? Am I attracted to fashion or artists or music from these lines? Can I find out more? Can I make a playlist for my Venus line? Do I want to set my dating profile to go through these locations so I can connect with people? Do I want to set an intention? I mean, London's so multicultural, right? I guarantee you that wherever your Venus lines in the world, there's going to be people in London from those places. So setting intention, okay, I want to meet people from my Venus line in London or wherever it is you are. And that's the idea with astrology. The more you pay attention to it, the more synchronicities are going to just start to show up.
I'm loving that. I'm loving being in London and actually just calling in people that are on your Venus line. So your Venus line may be in Canada. Let's call them in, because, of course, you can meet people from Argentina, you can meet people from Africa, you can meet people from everywhere and anywhere. But we can just call them in wherever we are. So we don't necessarily have to be on our Venus line, but we can intentionally bring our Venus line people to us.
Absolutely. And just like the example I gave in the book, one of the examples was John Lennon and Yoko Ono. So they're from each other's Venus line. So John Lennon's Venus line goes right through Tokyo, and Yoko's Venus line went right through Liverpool. So that's an example of each person being attracted to the other person. And that happens all the time. You see it all the time in synastry. I can definitely attest to that. Like, I'm constantly using astrocartography, and luckily I get to travel so much. So I really get a lot of empirical evidence that I can, garner together. But I definitely find that wherever your Venus lines are, you're going to be more attractive to people from those areas, whether it's friendship, platonic, intimate, jobs, whatever it is. Because with Venus, people want to help you. They want to give you things. Now, if you're living on a Venus line, now you're on a Venus and Gemini line, which is very different because you're using that in your career. But for some people, like for me, example, like I would say I'm quite fiery. I've got a lot of fire in my chart. I don't know if I'd want to live completely on my Venus line, because on a Venus line it's a little bit more low key. You're receiving from other people. You're not necessarily doing lots of things or taking actions, because Venus ultimately is more of a yin planet. And so while I enjoy going there for vacation, I think for me, I live on a Jupiter line, and that's far more my tempo. So if you're someone who's quite type A and you want to be in the mix and you want to be hustling, you might find Venus a little bit too moderate for you. You might be more happy on a Mars or a Sun line. Now, you always have to think about what sign the Venus is, and you're literally living your Venus in Gemini. So I think for you, it's working really, really well. But also I would say you're constantly doing new things, constantly writing new topics, thinking about what else you can do, how you can go beyond, because that's Venus in Gemini. Like, it's not necessarily being like, I'm happy with this now, I'm going to coast by. Like, that's never going to be you. You're always going to be learning, evolving, growing, and keeping moving with that Venus in Gemini, because it's mutable.
Do you have any personal stories where, that really also comes to life?
Yeah, so for me, I was born on a Saturn line in Ireland, which Saturn is a planet of restriction, delays, obstacles, the outsider. And for me, I grew up in the countryside. So first of all, I always laugh because it's so literal. So I literally grew up with no neighbors, no kids my age. It was very remote. And I was always the outsider because I didn't go to the village school. There's maybe like 50 people in the local village. I went somewhere else. And I was never kind of part of that. Like, I was always a little bit like the country person. And then I went to uni and I was was still the outsider. And then I kind of left Ireland as soon as I graduated. I moved to Australia, actually. I moved to my sun line. And that was so different. Like you think about moving from Saturn to Sun, it's just night and day. Like Saturn is where you have to work really, really hard and you might get a C. But on the Sun line, it's like you're acing your grades without even putting much effort in, right? Saturn, you have to kind of toil.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm extremely isolated when I go home to Ireland, but I love it. Like that's where I wrote most of the book. So I can be so dedicated, so focused when I'm there. And if you're looking to do something serious, like a PhD, write a book, start a new business, or if you feel like you've been kind of partying away for a couple of years and you want to get serious, Saturn can be a great energy for you to go to that. So I'm not going to say it's all bad at all, but I think for me, I moved to my Jupiter line in Berlin and everything just like Berlin is such a huge city anyway, but to me, it just feels so anonymous, so permissive, so expansive. And I just love that feeling. Like I love that feeling when I'm there. And even though I travel a lot, like I still love coming home to Berlin and feeling like, oh, this is so big here. Where in Ireland, it's just got a little bit more of a parochial environment. And I prefer that more big picture thinking. So I've kind of moved from Saturn to Jupiter, but I'm back in Ireland all the time and I still love it. And I love the countryside. I like having that mix of city life and country life.
And this book, which is a wonderful way of doing it yourself, finding out and learning more about it yourself.
Absolutely. So you can use it. You can use my app to download this. You can use astro.com. And then you can also just, if you have the book, you can start to write in. So each planet has a chapter and you can start to go, okay, if your Mercury line goes through Paris, okay, you can write Paris next to the Mercury. You can almost use the book as a travel almanac because in each chapter I have calls to action for how you can get the most out of that line. Because again, like you're not going to just go to your Jupiter line and everything's going to be rosy, right? We have free will. Just like when we have a transit, like, yes, of course, when we have a Jupiter transit, we have the potential to grow, but we still have to take a risk, to say yes, to do things, to stretch ourselves. So likewise, when you're going to your Jupiter line, you want to make sure that you're also expanding. You're not just going there and thinking, okay, like what's happening here? So absolutely, we have to take action when we go to these places.
Wow, Clarisse, I mean, what an amazing gift this book is. I'm loving this book and I'm loving all of these insights and this wisdom and how you've brought it all to life. And I really hope that everyone listening can, understand a little bit more about astrocartography and the power of it and the why of astrocartography too. It really does give us another way to make sense of what's happening and make sense of where we're guided or not guided or what it, what the next steps can be or look like. So I really, really loved seeing you and chatting with you today. And let's just come to the words love, purpose, connection, because that's always, what I ask people at the end of a podcast, what those words mean to you, Clarisse.
Well, I love whenever I'm reading those and now looking at your chart, I just see the Venus and Gemini next to Saturn and Mars, right? Because love is Venus, Saturn is purpose, and Mars is bringing it forward with that connection. So it's really your 10th house manifestation, which you're living on. So you're a living embodiment of your Venus career line. But for me, it's about connecting more with my birth chart and hopefully inspiring other people to do that. Because when you connect with Venus, you're connecting with that sense of love, harmony, and beauty to the highest ideal. Now, obviously, each planet has got a shadow side and a positive side. And on Venus's shadow, she can be a little bit lazy, too indulgent, etc. But when we constantly trying to strive to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And I do that through astrology. I just find that it makes everything so much more meaningful. So whether that is Mars and sometimes people might be like, well, why the hell would I want to go to Mars? And I think for some people, especially if they've been in a relationship for a long time where they maybe have not put their needs first, or if they're been a bit more of a people pleaser their whole life, going to Mars sign can be so awakening. And like, okay, I don't just have to think about the other. I can think about myself now. And sometimes we need that. And so for love, purpose, and connection, really thinking about what you need right now, what archetype you connect with. It's not just about going to the easier lines like Venus and Jupiter. Maybe what you need right now for your purpose, love, and connection is some Mars energy or some Uranus or some Saturn. So to really invite all of the planets in for all of their guidance. That would be how I connect with those words.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Clarisse.
Thank you so much, Estelle.
Thank you so much for listening to Love, Purpose, Connection with me, Estelle Bingham. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd really appreciate that. And if you really liked it, then leave me a review so I can keep doing what I love, healing one heart at a time. You can also follow me, Estelle.Bingham, on Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest releases. If you feel in need of some extra guidance, then my book, Manifest Your True Essence, could be helpful. You can find it online or in any major bookshop. In the meantime, thanks again for listening, thanks again for watching, and I will join you on the next episode of the Love Purpose Connection podcast.